Hi, I'm Sherry from SherryLouMiller.com. And today I'm going to have a guest join me, one of my former coworkers, but also a friend of mine, Robert Mayfield. And we're going to discuss financial family trees. Because in a previous video where I was talking about educating your children on wealth and building generational wealth, I talked about how some of our financial habits or beliefs around money and the stories we tell ourselves about money can be passed down from generation, from your grandparents to your parents, from your parents to yourself, and then you're passing them on to your children. But at some point, it can change. You can actually be the catalyst to change your legacy going forward. So that's what Robert and I are going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how he had a mindset shift and he's been able to start to build wealth and educate his children on the process as well. So he'll be joining us today, and I'll have him introduce himself.
Not yet. Yes, it's recording.
Go ahead.
All right. Hello, my name is Robert Mayfield. I have been knowing Sherry for about 14 years. We've worked together for at a particular place and stuff, and so we kept in contact. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, or on the outskirts in Roswell, Georgia, and I'm married. I have two kids, one in college and an 8-year-old and stuff. So it's a considerable gap in between the two, but I tell you what, the little one keeps you young and keeps you strong. So
I'm gonna take your word for that, because I tell you all the time, God bless you. Since we the same age, because I'm glad I'm done with mine. So like I said in the intro, we're going to start with the financial family tree. So with Robert, he transitioned from a status quo lifestyle to just kind of chugging along to now he's building generational wealth and training his kids on financial literacy. So I'm gonna let you pick up the story where you want to start, and then we'll just go from there.
Sure. So growing up with my parents, I was an only child. So as far as them providing for me, that was, I guess, I got what I wanted at the time. We did have kids, my cousins living with us from time to time. So throughout my formative years, probably anywhere from about 7 to around 12, we would have relatives living with us from time to time. I remember my mom went and actually rescued my cousin from a particular home, a group home, and she took her and brought her in. She lived with us. So throughout those years, we always had someone else living with us and stuff, which was fine, because it was a sense, it let me know, my dad really cared for, and these were his nieces and nephews that were coming to live with us.
Yeah.
Then one day at church, I was 15 years old. My mom and dad are in church, and they're sitting in one pew. Lady and some other ladies were sitting in the pew in front of them, and just my mom overheard them whisper about a little Mayfield baby that was about to be adopted. So she looked at my dad and said, "Hey, that's your niece." Immediately Monday morning, they go over to the hospital, start putting in the papers and everything to adopt her. And that's how my sister is actually my second cousin. So
Yeah.
So having people around, I think, caused my father to work. So I'm getting to that part. Caused him to work and stuff. He had 4 jobs. He had a job at this place called Southern Screw. He had a job at since we were in an agricultural area and not technical, but agricultural and just textile and places like that and furniture. So he had a job at a local feed mill. He had a job at this place called Southern Screw. He also took care of the local movie theater and the local drive-in theater. So on Sunday mornings before church, we were outside, cleaning up the drive-in theater. Come home, we'd go to church.
So did that affect your work ethic?
Yes. And this is how it affected it. it made me not afraid to go wherever I needed to go to get a job. So I used to tell all folks and stuff, if push come to shove, I either be on the back of the truck picking it up, I'll be at McDonald's. I'll work 5 shifts if I have to. So that did have an effect on the work ethic. Saw him doing that. It did. Now it didn't make me say, man, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do that. If anything, it gave me the confidence to know that if I needed to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, I did. And I did it in college. I worked, like I said, from one summer 8 to 12 in college, then from 12 to 4, and then from 4 going into midnight. I sometimes pull that shift. I got down here, I was still doing some training. I was trying to make the Olympics and all that stuff. I picked up a job at Olive Garden. And once they saw that I would work, can you do a double shift today? It'll be a Sunday. I didn't have anything to do. You do a double shift? Yeah, I do a double shift. Because it was work. It was just work. It was nothing. It was just
So
work.
did your mother work too, or was she stay at home?
No, she worked too. She had her. she worked. She worked a third shift job. So she had third shift, and my dad had all the shifts.
So what do you think their like thoughts and relationship with money were? Did they like discuss it? Did they fight over it? Like, what was it growing up? Like, what were you exposed to related to money?
Well, all right.
Because 4 jobs and your mother working is a lot. It's like, how do you even have time to do anything?
Exactly.
Especially with young kids.
And we traveled. We would travel they would find the time to do it, and we would travel. I know he started, let's just say this and stuff. I know I had a club, not a club, but they started a college fund for me, but they had to use it. And I'm not sure if it was.
That happens. That I had to do that too.
To help a relative.
Life happens and college hasn't come up yet.
Life happened. And I think maybe to help a relative, to help somebody. But the discussion of finances, back then, you didn't do it with the kids. You didn't sit down.
You didn't do it, but a lot of times, like, because I'm a single parent home, there's no discussion because it was just my mother. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you overhear things.
Yes.
Like, related to other things, you overhear it. As you get older, you're more aware of it, even if they don't discuss it with you.
Right.
Because trust me, my daughters, as they got older, they tell me the things that they used to overhear. So when you think they're not paying attention, they are.
Yeah, and the thing is, now they did plan, and that's where I got that from. I got that. All right, so you're right. You're absolutely correct, Jerry. You're absolutely correct. I got this meticulous planning as far as, for instance, when we're going to go on a trip, from A to Z. The money spent, money spent for this, money spent for this, contingency for this, gas, miles, hotel here, stop here. I got all of that from my father and stuff. My mom would handle other things, in the house, but I'm talking about that planning A to Z, that came from him. That came all from him, because he would do it. He would do the same thing over and over, which is, number one, starting on a trip, we had to have ham, and we had to have ham, fried chicken, potato salad, and cake. And he would start cooking that ham 4 o'clock in the morning before we left at 5. Never failed. And on every trip we did.
So did you carry their financial habits into your adult life, do you think, or you just developed your own?
Well, I think I developed my own, and I think what happened, because he passed when I was 15, and that left an indelible mark, because the one thing, obviously, well, not obviously, but the one thing that he and I shared, I started excelling in sports when I hit high school. I mean, I was doing 7th, 8th grade, but when I hit high school, instead of me, I started excelling in sports, in baseball, and then in basketball, then in track, and in football. So it was going. Things were coming, things were going. But he died the next year, right when I was about to make varsity on all of this stuff. The week before school, or in fact, the day before school, he died. So I missed the first week of my sophomore year. Now I'm on his chest, trying to bring him back, give him mouth to mouth. So let's just say that next year, I remember staying in, and I'm headed somewhere with this. because there was a particular reason. Something did affect me as far as money and finances are concerned. So the next year, I think my junior year, I get a job in the summer, right? Because I'm watching my mom. I remember sitting beside her when we were going to pay these bills off, because she had a little bit of insurance,
Mm-hmm.
to pay some bills off, but not that much. So the first thing, she started to get Social Security. I remember her talking about that, and she could get Social Security. She still was trying to work, go back to work. But I do remember when I had my first job, I walked in the door and I gave her my entire check. I said, "Here," because I thought that's
You the
what,
man of the house?
yeah. I just handed it to her. I just said, "Here, you take it." She said, "No, no, 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 no. This is how we're going to do this." So she actually put it back and said, "No, you're going to put this here, and you're going to put this here, and you're going to do this here." So I have to say, when you make me remember, when you ask me the questions, they were meticulous. Even today, my mom can tell you every penny, where every penny is gone.
Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much been like that out of necessity because I keep my budget spreadsheet. So I only take out, like, I don't do the ATM things, like running back and forth to the ATM. Because I tell people, you spend way too much money like that,
Right.
especially because you're probably not tracking it. You get
Mm-mm.
low and just go get more. So
Right.
I normally take out, well, not so much now because, my income's irregular, but when I was on a corporate income, when I got paid, however much money I took out for spending, that had to last me to payday. I'm not going to say I never went to the ATM, but
Right.
I rarely will
And
go
see,
to.
that's discipline. That's discipline. And
It's out
I
of
did it.
necessity because, when you're a single parent and everything's dependent on you, it's a
Right.
little different. Like
Right.
like with your mother, she had two kids depending on her. I had two daughters depending on me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tell people, and I tracked it. I didn't track like whatever I took the cash out. I didn't track it. One time I did a spending challenge just for myself because I was like, where is my money going? The cash part of it,
Right.
because everything else was in the spreadsheet. How much I spent on groceries, how much my bills were, all of that was in the spreadsheet. But when I took out the cash for my spending, I didn't track that. Because even on the 30-day thing, it can get tedious. So to do that forever and ever, for me, it wasn't realistic. But I did it for 30 days to figure out where my money was going. And it's an eye opener because sometimes you just don't realize what you're spending on autopilot.
Mm-mm.
Like you
You
just
don't.
spend money really without even thinking about it. Everybody has a story. If they leave the house on Saturday morning with 100 and you come back with 20 and you're like,
Amen.
where did that go?
Exactly.
You don't really have anything physical to count for, but if you go back through your day, oh yeah, I went and got something to eat. And then I did, you can account for it,
Right.
but it's just like flows through your hands. So
Right. And that's what they knew, making accessible the ATM, accessible to money is what ATM should mean.
and
Accessible to
that's a
money.
good acronym because even like I tell my kids, like, don't attach it to overdraft because if you 2 pennies short, they're gonna charge you an overdraft fee.
Yeah.
If you don't have, it don't matter. One time my daughter was like, I don't know, she was a couple of dollars short or something, I don't remember, but it wasn't a lot. And I told her, but you still didn't have it.
Right.
It doesn't matter how short you are. They're loaning you the money, they're going to advance you the money, and they're going to charge the fee.
Yes.
So I told her, I was like, turn it off. So it's like, so you don't have to worry about that because, depending on if you're not, because that generation doesn't keep check registers. I mean, I don't keep one anymore, but back then I kept a check register.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're
Yeah,
trying to
I
do it
have
in your
one.
head,
Right.
that's just not realistic.
No.
So we'll kind of fast forward to you as an adult and you had kids. Like, what do you think we're going to do pre-Robert 2.0? So when you were
Okay.
Robert 1.0, as far as your finances, what do you think like you were teaching your kids then, or what do you think you would leading by example as far as finances?
Well, the way it started out was somehow or another, and I'll just transparent here. Somehow or another, in conversations with my son now, he, for whatever reason, and I'll keep it that way, thought that I wasn't able to provide. I'll say that. And he was projecting that towards me because every time I'd ask him about something, what he needed, he would say, I don't need anything, Dad. And I'm like, but I had it and was trying to provide it. And he would always say, no, I don't need anything, Dad. I'm good. Every so often, when it was a necessity, maybe I would hear from him, or I'm saying when he was younger. So let's just say Robert 1.0, what I was doing was trying to help everyone but me, to keep, I
So
was,
why do you think he thought you didn't have it? Were you talking about you didn't have it and you didn't know he was listening? I mean, why would he think that you didn't have it available to help him?
I, I think it came from other places. I'll just say that. I think it
Okay,
came from other places.
I got
Um,
you.
okay. But he, but I would always ask him. Now, a couple of times prior to him being, prior to when he was born, like twice I gave up an entire check to two people, to one,
So,
close
so,
family.
so that's like really not a good money mindset. So does that come from, like, where does that come from? Because you said, um, even though your father worked 4 jobs, your mother worked one, you guys still had like a certain quality of life.
Correct.
So like to give up money and not even leave enough for yourself. Um,
Was almost financial suicide.
yeah.
And
So
this is what
if that didn't come from your parents, where do you think it came from?
I think it came from the death of my
But your
dad.
father.
Yeah, I'm saying I think it came from the death of from his when he passed and me making that whatever you want to call it that solemn vow in my head. Because one of the checks I gave it to my mom. She doesn't know that to this day. So she sees this. If she were to see this, I'm dead in the water. I'm dead in the water. She doesn't know I did that. The entire, not just the
So what is
entire.
it out of obligation because you felt like you had to step up,
It was because I didn't want to see her
struggle?
with struggle with the sacrifices that she had made. So my mindset was, oh, I can get another job. I can get a second, third job and do it. I can make up the difference. I can get a second and third job and do this and that. That wasn't the right thing because it had too many things going on. So let's just say the honorable sacrifice. That's the mindset I had. Robert 1.0 was an honorable sacrifice. And one of my friends, it's an old saying, but one of my friends said, the old, what is it, rising tide? Rising tide floats all the ships. She said, so if you sinking, I remember telling her, so if you sinking, so how you can help them? How are you going to help them if you are sinking? If you can't take care of yourself, how are
Well,
you
it's the
going to take
same
care of
thing
them?
with the air on the airplane. Like you
Yes,
have to do the oxygen first. Even though
yes.
my grandson told me, "How you go do the oxygen?" Like I told him, I was like, "I'll do you," even though you're supposed to do the kids first. I'm like, "Well, I can't pass out." I was just joking with him, but anyway, yeah, that's like. So when did that shift? Because I don't think you've ever told me that before. So when did you give up the? My sister's like that to this day. She will still, it's 15 years between us, so I won't tell her age. So she's 15 years older than me. And she still will give everyone else. And then she's left with trying to figure out how she's going to do what she needs to do. And to me, it's good to help people, but not to sacrifice yourself on a regular basis. Maybe occasionally. I'm not saying never do it, but to make that like almost a way of life or a habit, that's not healthy either.
It's not. A lot of people do it. A lot of people do it. As we sit here talking about it, I think I know reason. I think I just with, but it is the circumstances. I think it was a combination of circumstances. Again, the picture of me seeing her, you know, losing him, but knowing that he was that main breadwinner, I said to myself, I got to help. I got to do whatever it takes to help. So again, number one, I stayed in for an entire year trying to keep her company. I was like a sophomore. I was like, I'm not going
So you
anywhere. I'm
gave
leaving
up the
home.
sports
I
pretty
gave
much.
up. Yeah, well, I tried to. She wouldn't let me do it. Coaches came over. All the coaches came over and stuff. I mean, I was 15. I made this grand announcement. I ain't playing sports no more. I got to get a job and help my dad. Help my mom. They didn't know what to say. She shut it down. She shut it down
So,
quickly. She just, no, son, keep moving. So this is what I'm saying. As I got older, I would always write these letters to her on New Year's Eve. I'd always write these letters to her, and I'd tell her that if you ever get a call from me, and I still have them, this is 30, 40 years ago almost. I said, if you ever get a call from me in the middle of the night saying, pack your bags, I've either hit the lottery, I've saved enough, or I've done something, right? So I didn't quite do that, but what I did to her was that I sent her a picture one time when I had my house built. I sent her a picture. I said, it'd be nice if you could, if that was your room whenever you came down, And she's like, what are you looking at? So we're just checking out a house. Didn't say anything. We were buying it. So we just running around. We'd already built the doggone thing, you know. My point is, when she came in, that look on her face, she walked in and realized that the pictures we had shown all along was real and was where we were living. So
right.
that's what it was, Jerry. That's what it was. It was the death of him, and me seeing, as a 15-year-old, kind of helpless, not being able to help her, not being able to help the person that I knew sacrificed for me. So I developed that help mindset. But I realized now where it changed was the time I gave both of those checks away within a year, and it almost financially ruined me. I mean, I came this close to living in the street. I'm just saying.
Because so, like I was saying, with the family financial tree, you have your grandparents, whatever they passed down to your parents, and then your parents don't really seem like they passed it down, like
Right.
your mindset became your own, which is the same case for me. I've done videos on that. I don't really have my mother's relation, well, she's deceased now, relationship she had with money. It did come from, as we discussed before, from things that went on in my childhood. I just
Yeah.
went the opposite because,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have a lot. Like, she was doing what she could. Because before my parents divorced, she was a stay-at-home mother. So when they divorced, now it's 6 of us. So 3 were adults and 3 were minors. So now she goes from a stay-at-home to she has to support 3 kids.
Right.
So, we had what we needed. I didn't always have what I wanted. Which, as a child, when you see other people have the things that you want, as I got older, I think that's where my relationship changed with money. Because now when I started working, I wanted to be able to have the things that I needed and wanted. Not that I was, and so I didn't really have a healthy relationship with money.
Yeah, it's important. And when you say
So,
healthy,
and I think even though I would tell my daughters, like, don't do this because, I struggle with this, and don't do that so that you don't walk in my footsteps. Like, I'm trying to educate them so that they have a different experience. We lead by example. So
right.
they pretty much, even though I told them one thing, their life to me mirrors mine because that's what they saw, even though I was preaching something.
That's good.
Yeah. So,
That's good.
I tell them, like, I tried so hard for you not to have this lifestyle, and now you're walking my same path, but they're doing what they saw me doing, not the things that I was saying.
Right. No, I
So
hear you.
we'll kind of go. So you, like I said, we talked about it, and so you were kind of content. You were just going through life, even
Correct.
though, you transitioned to jobs and you made more money. When we talked earlier, you didn't really change like your money mindset or your
Mm-mm.
story. You were still living, even though your income level went up, you were still living the same life.
Right. And still trying to let's just say, float every ship but my own, so to speak. And then when I mean my own, I'm talking, me internally. So we moved, to an area, and again, we were attending church, and some families there. We started to meet some folks and stuff, and it's obviously it's convenient, it's close to home. We're seeing these folks in the community. And one day, one of the guys, like I say, he was a former football player, just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, have a little barbecue." It was on Sunday afternoon. He said, "Come on over." You know, we get over there, and most of the folks at church are there, and relaxed atmosphere, much easier to talk, much starting to chat, and just we had a little men's group as well, and so we're starting to share stuff in the men's group, and it just it's just starting to get a little closer, and we're doing things with families here and there. I started to realize, I guess just by not osmosis, but just birds of a feather, because these guys were like I said, one was a professional football player. He has his businesses. The other one was a VP at like I said, a big insurance company, and then a VP in human resources and stuff. And then another one, like I said, project manager, all these guys and stuff. And they were pushing, and they had discipline, and they had a set way, because we would discuss these things, just like you and I are discussing now. We would discuss these things in our men's group about having a plan for your family, being the head of the household, not in a macho sense, the head of a household, but just stepping up and just taking
being that provider.
Partly.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be big, and especially in the African American community, that men be the protectors and providers of the family.
But at the same time, knowing, because these guys would say these things, knowing that our wives, our helpmeets, would help meet that, because you can't do that stuff by yourself.
Right.
You can't.
Usually one person tends to take the lead, though.
Yeah, usually one person.
Like I have a friend, like her husband is something similar. He's in a group, and the men kind of do the finances. I mean, the women work and they're professional, but from my conversations with her, the men kind of take the lead on the investment and the household finances and how they're going to do the money. I'm sure it's a discussion, but
it's definitely a discussion. No, it's definitely a discussion. And I had that discussion. I had the discussion with my wife and stuff, and to create, let's just say, when it came down to family business, and if anybody that's part of the family, I mean the extended family, in-laws and sisters and brothers and whatever and stuff. So if it came down to that and decision had to be made, I would always tell her, I said, well, if you don't feel like making that decision or saying it, just tell them to come to me. And that I'll take the blame, or I'll take the responsibility of having made that decision. And that's what I mean by being head of the household. Yeah, that type of stuff. So again, fast forward here, still starting to meet these guys, and really one night we had a Christmas party one evening, and one of my buddies, like I say, he, handling millions of dollars in a budget, just talked to me about this particular insurance business that he was looking at. And he explained some concepts to me that I had never heard of.
Yeah, when you tell me about them, like since then, I've talked to a couple people about them. So I know you said like when your circle changed, your mindset started to shift.
Yeah, just looking. I'm saying looking at opportunities. How people talk about having different streams of income. I ain't heard that before. not in a true sense, But these folks I'm looking at, they're talking about these things and actively discussing this, and in some cases doing it. So you start to see and you start to hear, and especially you start to hear educational concepts, and even how they're teaching their children, even how you hear, oh yeah, we have these discussions, all the time around this and around that. And you know what? Yeah, And it just, go ahead,
But
go
that's
ahead.
the thing, like, like I said, I was trying to teach my children by telling them not to do what I do. But then, they're watching me
Right.
struggle at the time. And obviously that's what stayed in their subconscious because they both have gone through it themselves.
That's a good point. We
So
always say,
it's
what is it? Do as I say, not as I do.
not as I do. So yeah, so it's you have to be mindful because kids, depending on the type of child, like I was a kid like that. I might be sitting in a room not saying anything, but I'm taking it all in. Now you have
Yeah,
other kids, you have other young children that they're sitting there and they're not paying you any attention.
right.
So, but that wasn't me. So the thing is, it's like, when you want to transform your mindset or elevate your money story, you do have to change your circle. Like if you're around, and not to put anybody down or anything like that, but if everybody around you, your whole circle, all you're doing is complaining about your job, how you
Struggling.
barely make ends meet, or like if everybody that you hang around is talking like that, then you can't elevate yourself. Like you got to get around a different type of conversation and expose yourself to different things.
That's the key.
That's the only way you're going to grow is you got to start exposing yourself to different type of conversation. You don't have to
That's the
leave
key.
anybody behind, but you got to broaden your circle.
Right. And you don't, and the key, you said the conversation, right? So if the group you hanging with, everybody complaining, everybody, because everybody can be hustling and doing their thing and trying to make it. But if you're in a group where everybody's complaining and the struggle is real, we all know the struggle is real, right? We all know the
Because
struggle
the
is real.
struggle is real. Because like myself, I have different groups of friends. Because none of my immediate circle wants to be an entrepreneur, where you've known me for a while, like that's my lifelong dream.
Right.
But most of my friends were comfortable in corporate America, which I worked in corporate America, but that was never supposed to be my final destination. I definitely stayed there much longer, but everything has a time and a place. I mean, when it came time for me to leave, left. And the same thing with my mindset. Like I'm into the law of attraction and manifesting, and most of my friends are not. So I have different circle of friends that I can discuss these things with, So I think that's important.
Well,
So
that,
so you're around these people and you're doing the insurance, and they've exposed you to how the insurance can actually start to build wealth for you and your family.
yes. Yeah, education. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, because I
And
wasn't aware of the insurance thing. Maybe talk about that a little bit, how the money you can withdraw even before you're passed away, and how it actually builds wealth for you to pass on to your children.
yeah, a lot of these, let's just say a lot of folks who have been passing their generational wealth on, they do it through insurance because number one, insurance is not taxed. It's not taxed like like your
Put a
normal.
disclaimer. Put a disclaimer.
Yes, we need to put the
We are
disclaimer.
not advisors.
We're not
This is for
advisors. We're not
illustrative
advisors.
purposes only.
For illustrative purposes only. But it was the concept. I'll just say that it was the concept of being able to set something up, and using time also. Let's talk about the math concept, right? Compound interest. That's just simple math. It's just simple math. You put some money away, use time, to help it compound that interest. The rule of 72. So, if we do 5%, $1,000, or the 6%, it's better to do that because it's easier math. So you take $1,000, right? Earning 6% interest, divide that 6% by 72, that's 12, if I'm correct in my math, right? So every 12 years, that $1,000 will double, right? 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 gets to 4, 4 gets to 6. 4 gets to 8, and then 8 gets to 12. And that was just $1,000. That's what opened up to seeing that, to actually seeing illustrations.
Well, how to make your money work for you. I mean,
Thank you.
that's the thing. Like, people have to realize, you have to, wealth is, there's a difference between, like I tell my grandson all the time, there's a difference between being rich and wealthy. It's a
Come on.
difference in your mindset. And wealthy people leverage their money and they make their money work for them.
Yes.
You know, and you could be rich, but that's like strictly, to me, that's strictly financial. And that's
Right.
why a lot of rich people, they're not necessarily wealthy and they may end up spending all their money, losing their money, whatever, because it's a difference in mindset of how you relate to money and how you treat your money and what you use your money for.
Yeah. What you
Like we
use
were
your money
talking
for.
yesterday, it's just a tool. And so it shouldn't be the goal.
Mm-mm.
And like, you know, they said, as we discussed yesterday, because, you know, myself included, as your salary rises and rises and rises, in theory, if you kept your expenses down here, you should really be doing a lot better as your income rises. But if you're not, and your life is really staying the same, that means every time you go up here, you go up here. Every time you go up here, you go up here. And you're not really elevating your life. You're just coasting along.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Just
so
small.
you're not in a place to create generational wealth. So
Right.
now, as you mentioned at the beginning of the video, you have your son who's, how old is he now?
He's 20. He'll be 21 October.
Okay, so he's 20 and your daughter's 8.
Right.
So you had him and he didn't think you had enough to even satisfy his needs.
Right.
So now you're in a different place. Does he see the change in your lifestyle? Like, have you passed on your new,
It's
because your
good.
daughter's growing up with it, so she
Right.
won't know the Robert 1.0 version.
No. And
But
we're teaching her.
yeah, so now you're here on your family tree. You're you and your wife, and now your generations, you know, to come should have a different mindset in theory.
Right. In theory.
You know, they should have a different mindset because you're teaching them about finance and teach, like you said, the rule of 72 and compounding. So does your son see the difference or?
He did. He did. He did. As evidenced by when he's, you know, he said some things to me, you know, in conversation. I think when we were able to, you know, we purchased a car for him, and he was in there. He was in there listening to my wife break down the guy, totally broke him down. My son hit me on the shoulder when we got our car. He was like, "Dad, did you see that? Did you see that?" You know, first person to speak loses. The guy, you know, wrote the offer on the thing, slid it over to Sam. She looked at it. She sat back and did this. I'm looking at, I side eye. I'm looking at my son, Sherry. He don't know what to do because he sees this happening, but this is so foreign to him. He'd see, you know, we both, you know, we just sit back. I knew to be quiet then too. That's why I told him later on. I said she was running that. I said that's what she knows how to do. So we had that conversation. So he saw it, and he saw the let's just say the courage, the confidence, the
Yeah, that's what I was
courage,
gonna say, the confidence.
the confidence and the courage and stuff. He saw what it you know what it took to do that and stuff. So we get in the car. We you know purchase the car. We drive him back or whatever. We get back and stuff. And he had really started talking to me, saying, "You know what? It's not." He started to say he understood some stuff. He started to say that he saw, you know, us go from, let's just say, from here to here to here. We had some kids come over. Some of his friends come over. It was nothing big, and it was nothing big. I asked them to help us move, and I paid them for their time. I calculated the hours. They did. They worked. They worked and stuff. They were looking at it, looking at the you know, I had $100 bills and stuff because we worked all day. I'm giving, you know, it's about 6, 7. I'm just giving them out and stuff, and they're looking. And so, well, you get paid for your work, son. You get paid for your work. So that whole thing with the insurance, I explained that to him. I explained to him, you know, that we're trying to change the trajectory of their lives and stuff. And I did it at the time. I started to do it 15, or he was 16. And what I was trying to do at the time was I was trying to drip to him. No, I was trying to drip to him. I didn't want to, you know, I mean, he'd always make jokes, you know, about us when we were traveling and things. And he would see some things, you know, he's 15, 16, he's listening, he understood. He just didn't know the full story. I will say that he started to see that change. So when he got to college now, he's 21, you know, he's over in school and stuff. We have these conversations all the time. So he called me up now, he asked my advice. He asked my advice about, you know, just type of, you know, the finances going forward. We talk about savings. I tell him,
But
you know,
do you talk about mindset?
yes, what is
Because did he see you? Because I'm trying to figure out all the way back to the beginning. You know, I get stuck on things. I get stuck in a loop.
Sure.
The fact that he didn't, even though you directly asked him if he needed something, he didn't feel comfortable saying he needed it because he didn't think you had it. So do you ever talk to him about, like, you know, did he witness you sacrificing yourself to give to others? Because that wouldn't be something you want to pass on. Like, you know, like you don't want to pass that on because he's a man. You don't want to pass that mindset on to him that he has to sacrifice himself to help someone else.
Right. I didn't know, because then, you know, when, you know, my wife and I are married, and he see us working together. And that's what I used to tell him. You know, once he got old enough and started kind of paying attention, and I was telling him, I said, well, you see, we're combining. I talk about combining. I said, when we combine, this is what we're able to do. We're able to do these things and stuff, because we take him on vacations and stuff with us, and go these places and do these things, you know. You know, he started to look, like I said, as he got older, he started to understand, because he was, you know, he was hearing and he was seeing stuff, and you know, we would move, you know, well, when we moved into that place, you know, it was a nice area, very nice area, and we were just talking about, you know, I'm trying to tell him, you know, we worked for this, but this is what we had to do. So he asked me one day, he didn't ask me how much, you know, something costs and stuff, but he said, how did you do it? I said, well, in your job, you have what's called a 401k. And when I was X amount of years ago, you know, I just, you know, the money was saved up. It allows you to get a loan so you can afford this. And at the time, the market was way down. I told him, I said, now we also lucked out, you know, when we were able to buy, the market was like down. So I had to explain that to him. So that stuff seeped in. It seeped in.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because you're the catalyst now. Like, your level on the tree is the catalyst to affect everybody underneath you.
Right.
Like, so when he starts his own family, like, he has the mindset, the wealth mindset, not the rich mindset, that, you know, he wants to continue the legacy. Like, he wants to teach his children, because after, we'll kind of wrap this up in a little bit. After we spoke last night, I go on Facebook, and this thing with paying cash for a car is trending. So someone posted on Facebook this video of this young girl who said her mother was teaching her about finances, and she was going to teach her children about finances, and they were never going to have a car note. They were always going to pay cash for a car. And I can't figure out where this is coming from, because, like, I Googled it after that, because I was like, it's the opportunity cost that you lose by putting that much cash on a depreciable asset. Because in the video, she says, I'm going to always have assets and not liabilities. And, you know, I don't post on Facebook when I don't put things on threads, because you go back and forth. But I'm like, you have a depreciable asset that's not even worth what it was when you bought it as soon as you drove off. So yes, you have a car note with a liability, but if you really have a strong financial foundation, you have good credit. Now, we're talking about, like, a certain group of people. Now, like, because this, you know, I don't want to generalize. Maybe in some cases it's okay if you're buying a hoopty or something to pay cash for a car.
Understood.
When you're talking about paying $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 cash because you don't want a car note, if you have that amount of money in cash to spend, you probably have enough. You have good credit.
There you go.
So the amount, like you said, 5% or 6%. Your interest on your loan is probably going to be like 1.9, 2.9. So you're going to earn more than you would pay.
Yes.
So I think like, the whole thing on the channel is like mindset. Like we have to get to the point that you think it all the way through. You're not just in the moment. Like you do the A to Z. Like we teach our children, like it's not, finances aren't a one size fit all. Like
Right.
there are going to be some cases, yeah, pay cash for a car. Like, it's not every time. Just like I posted this video on my Instagram, I don't know, a few weeks ago. This guy, Chris Harder on For the Love of Money.
Mhm.
He did an in-depth podcast on renting versus buying because there are pros and cons to both.
Right.
But he broke down the numbers and really how people just look at, you bought a house for 100 and 30 years later you sold it for 250. But that was 30 years. So he was like, the interest you paid if you refinanced during those 30 years, the
Right.
upkeep that you paid. He said nobody looks at all the costs that you did. He said, and on a 30-year-old house, when you went to sell it, you had to, put some money into it
To
to get
fix
it
it
to
up.
market. So
Yes.
he broke down the numbers, and I agree with him. There's time to buy, there's time to rent.
Right.
Rent isn't always a black hole. And having a car note isn't either. So I was like, for generations, as we educate our children and ourselves, like we have to get into the mindset of actually looking at the situation and not just taking because somebody said, like, I don't want a car note. I want an asset. I don't want liabilities.
Right. And
Like when
I think
she said
education.
that, I was just like, oh, okay.
I think education does it though, because you just walked us through. You just walked us through a little bit of the education, right? I think the education does give you the mindset, or
Yeah.
gives you the ability to get the mindset. Let's just say that.
Well, it does because, and you have to change your habits and
Yeah.
your relationship with money.
Yes.
Because I was having a conversation with someone and I was like, everyone has these negative feelings towards debt. Like, like it's taboo. You don't want to touch it like it's the plague or something. But, but you don't want to abuse debt, but there is a time and place for it. There's sometimes when you're going to need to take out debt. And the problem comes is when you abuse it and use it excessively.
Use it.
So
Yeah.
so that it really is holding you hostage. Like you
Right.
charged $100 dinner. So you really couldn't afford to go to dinner because you charged $100 dinner. And now if depending on how long it takes you to pay that off, how much did that $100 dinner really cost you? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of things to me you look at related to debt. On a car note or anything like that, paying cash for something, you have to look at the missed opportunity cost. What is it costing you to pay cash for that?
Mm-hmm.
Because now if you have something, an interest rate is 25%, yeah, you only gonna earn 6. Okay, that's something different. But like I said, if you can walk in and pay $20, $30, $50,000 on a car, chances are you're gonna finance pretty low. That's all
Yes.
I'm saying. So you're
Yes.
actually, it's the gap to me between what you're gonna pay versus what you're gonna earn. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not, like I said, to repeat myself, you have to realize when we're talking to our children and now my grandson, that you listen to the gurus, but you take the information that fits your life. Just
Mm-hmm.
because they're saying it's that way, it may not fit your circumstances.
Right.
Our lives are unique. So what may work for you, that's not going to work for me because my
Right.
circumstances are different. So I think it's like your son, like it seems like he's picking up because he's seeing you have gone from, I don't mean like down here,
I
but he's
understand.
seeing, you're elevating your life and, you're surrounded, my shoulder is messed up. You're surrounding yourself with different people who are exposing you to different concepts and everything, and you're able to pass that on to them,
Yeah.
which is
Like
good.
you remember I told you about my buddy, the one that says he buy quality. He just don't want to pay for it.
Well, most people, like I try to tell people, like in my career, I've worked with some affluent people, and let me put this disclaimer. This is my opinion. People who typically cannot afford the designer labels have these labels plastered everywhere so that you can see they're
You can
wearing
see.
something
Yes.
that has cost some ridiculous amount of money. But people who can actually afford to pay that do not have labels plastered all over their clothes. You can look at the quality of the things that they have and tell that they're nice, but they're not showboating. And so
Mm-mm.
to me, that's again like a mindset. It's like, you want to have this mindset like a status. Like you want people to see that you're supposedly doing so well. And a lot of times you're not. Like
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna speak from people that I know that did that. They weren't doing that
Right.
way. They had all the designer things, the shoes, the expensive cars, but all of their money was coming in and going out to pay for those things.
Exactly. And
You
if you
know,
pull the covers back, if you pull the covers back on a lot of folks, then that's what you see. That's what you see. And that's been the most eye-opening thing. As you start to tell your kids, you start to, like I said with my son, now we can have these conversations. Like I said, he's about to be 21. We can have these conversations. And I always tell him, I said, and that's what I told him, I said, this is my charge to you. Because I remember the lady who tried to tell me what an IRA was and explain to me a little bit of the concepts. I didn't have time for it. But she also didn't because she had my ear, but she didn't say, come here, boy, and, listen. She didn't do that because I kind of did like this, and then she kind of faltered, and I'm like, and I was gone. With him, come here. That's what I did. Come here. Listen, I'm telling you this now. This is what I'm trying to do for you now. So when you get here and you get my age, because I'm not decrepit, I'm like, I'm not so broken down, I can't whatever and stuff. I said, you see me now. In a few years, this is going to be you. You're not going to, when you get this age, you're like, oh, you're not old. No, you don't. I said, you're going to realize this. I said, but what you need to do in between that time is boom and boom and boom and boom. So that's what the conversation we had now. And let's just say I apologized to him. I said, you know what? I said, really, but I didn't have a mindset. We talked about this. You don't know what you don't know.
well,
But
you
now
know better, you do better.
yeah, you know better, you do better. I started talking to him about it because you know what? It's not too late. He's 20, 21. It's not too late. Now we start talking about it. Now I can hear it as it comes out of him. He'll say something to me that I said to him, he'll repeat something to me that I said something, I don't know, a year ago, month ago, 2 months. I'll hear him, he'll throw it back to me. I said, okay, starting to stick. So he's already starting to think about these things and plan.
Well, most
So
of us are visual creatures. So, if you can see what type of life you want,
yeah,
and your parents are actually like, that's why, I follow a lot of people's story on the internet. You and I talk. And it's not like an envious thing. I like to reverse engineer people's thing. I'm like, okay, they were over here 2 years ago. So now they're way over here. How the heck did they go from here
right,
to there?
yep,
That's just how my brain works, because my thing is, I tell my kids all the time, you don't actually have to walk the path. Like, you choose to, but you don't always
mm-hmm.
have to walk it yourself. You can actually take somebody else's journey and see how they
Yes,
did it and how you can pull from that to fit your own circumstances and get you from where you are to where you want to be.
right.
Because,
That's good.
I don't have to walk into the wall personally. If you walked into it for me, I'm good with that, and I can take your story. Unfortunately, my children feel the need to walk into the wall themselves. So, but I tell them, I don't need to do that. Like, if I can take something from somebody else's story, that works for me. Because, especially when I run across somebody that has a similar mindset to mine, and I'm like, okay, they did that in a relatively short period of time, which also shows you, like with your son and your daughter, you're showing them the possibilities.
Right.
Like, sometimes if we're not exposed to the possibilities, that affects our mindset too, because we
Exposure.
haven't seen someone who has maybe what's in our dream. So we don't think we can achieve that dream because we haven't seen anybody else achieve it.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
So that's
And I
why
used to stop him.
when you expand your circle of friends, associates, whatever, you're exposed to more. The more you're exposed to, the more you'll grow.
Yeah. And you know what, though, thinking back, if we traveled or if we did something, I would, in the middle of it, I'd pull him to the side and I just whisper into his ear. I said, you see, you know, the reason we're doing this is because I did this, this, and this and stuff. And we had this conversation last night. I forget until you bring it up. I have, like, once the change happened within me, and then we would travel or we would go somewhere. I think when we were in the Dominican Republic, we took the families over and all of us were over there and everything. And in the middle of something, I just pulled them to the side and say, hey, we made this happen because we did this, this, and this. It was nothing, nothing big, but it was just some basic things.
Well, no, like I said, it's the possibilities, because when I was growing up, I think I might have been the only one with a single family home in my circle. I can't remember. If I wasn't the only one, most of my friends had two parents in the household. But I was the only one that went on vacation every year. Like, to this day, I don't know how my mother did it. I'm not even gonna lie, because I know about what she made. As a kid, I didn't know. But when I look back, every year we went. Now we we went to see. She took us back where she grew up because they have homecoming weekend, first weekend in July. So every year we were going south to homecoming. We graduated from the Greyhound to the train, then we was flying. But, when I look back, because it was three of us, me, her, and my sister. So I'm like, I don't know how she did it. But of all my friends, I was the only one. And it does expose you because, we would stop in DC and then, we would do the DC tourist stuff. Or the one year we went to Connecticut. So it exposes you to different environments versus just your little small community.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So we'll probably wrap up there. So you think, we didn't really talk about your daughter, but she's younger. Does she see it too?
Yeah.
I mean, more him because he's a young adult now. And like the same person I was having a concept with about the debt and, paying things cash, paying for cash for cars, is the earlier you start, like you said, like if you can get people to wrap their head, especially our children, around the effects of compound interest, of them starting, like I'm trying to get my daughters both to open up an IRA and start now. Because 5-10 years delay affects when you get to be our age.
Right.
So,
right. Well,
yeah.
He can already break down.
Do you think your son, he grasps that, he understands?
He got it. He got it. Once I explained to him what we did for him and where in a few years he's gonna be, he got it. And then when I broke it down to him for the young one and her policy and how that's set up, he really got it. Because I told him, I said, that's just it's just time. I said, there's nothing. I said, you have time too. I said, but we're starting with her here and you're here.
Much younger.
Yeah. I said, that's just how it is and stuff. Now, with her, she can already tell you what a mutual fund is. She can already tell you what investments and saving and being able to spend a little bit of the money that you have, but you want to save on in. What is the guy? I think I've told you this before. He has a series of videos for kids. Black guy.
Oh, Boyce Watkins.
Yes, she does those videos because my wife is determined. She does those videos.
The earlier you get them to understand, like I tell my grandson, because he's very materialistic. Very materialistic. It's not that you can't spend. Right. Because, it's not that you have to live a frugal lifestyle and deprive yourself of things. It's just that you have to be intentional of where you spend your money, and not just always have to have the latest, greatest, or you're in a store and you're impulse buying, like all of these things that really derail your finances.
Yep.
Like, you have to become more conscious about where you're spending money. Not that you can't spend it wherever you want, whatever makes you happy. But a lot of times, because I was an emotional spender, and this will be the last story, like a friend of mine passed away, and the day of his funeral, because I mean, it rocked my world. I went out and bought a new dining room set. Like I was planning on buying it anyway.
Right.
I was planning on buying a dining room set, but not that day. But like I was so like emotional. I didn't want to go home. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go shopping.
Right.
You know, I need a dining room set. Let me go shopping. And I really didn't even go to multiple stores. And the thing was, after I bought it, I couldn't stand that thing, the color, like all of it. It didn't. And we had it for years, obviously, because, you know, but I was an emotional spender. And a lot of times when you spend it, when you're in that frame of mind, it's usually buyer's remorse. I bet like if somebody did a study, the statistics are pretty high that you're going to regret that purchase.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the thing to me. It's just like not to teach our children or even ourselves that you can't spend money. It's just how you spend it. And you know, you want to save some of it, and you want to save it where it's actually earning you interest. Like not just, well, you keep some liquid. You should always probably have some liquid, but you know, you, like I said, you want to make your money work for you. You want the compound interest. That's how we're going to build generations of wealth.
Right. And with these, you know, again, with the insurance, with, you know, doing the financial health check, for instance, putting all your assets down, you know, seeing all your, you know, some people just do this and stuff. I know you do it. You've been doing it all your life.
I always know, even though I don't always like the picture, I can't say I always like the way it looks, but I typically, probably quarterly, at least semi-annually, I know how much debt I have. I know like my bills, like I keep it in a spreadsheet, because a lot of people with debt, they don't want to look at it. Like they know they have too much. So it's the avoidance thing, you know. And that doesn't help you to avoid it. It's not going to go away. The only way you're going to be able to get rid of it is to figure out how much you have and how you know, what can you do? Like what steps can you start to take that are going to move you out of this situation?
That's a mindset.
And
That's a mindset.
Like I was telling you about that workbook I was working on. The first step is awareness. If you don't know where you are, you can't change, because you have to know where you're starting from.
Right.
And you have to be honest with yourself, not only where you're starting from, but what did you do that got you there? Especially if you're not happy with where you are. If you're not happy with where you are, then you have to figure out what choices you made, what habits you had that got you where you are now. Because those things are going to have to change if you want to move forward.
Amen.
So I guess we'll end on that note. I'm gonna stop the recording.
All right.